The axolotl is Ambystoma mexicanum. The first time someone sees an axolotl, they usually say, "What is that?" And although axolotls are often mistaken for fish, they're actually a type of salamander. This kind of salamander is what is called neotenic. They don't go through metamorphosis and emerge from the water. So why don't they metamorphosis? The current hypothesis is that too many predators or lack of food sources on land would result in a salamander becoming neotenic. Rarely, axolotls will go through metamorphosis naturally, though this might not make their caretakers happy. Usually it results in a shorter lifespan. Metamorphosis can be triggered artificially using thyroid hormone. So where are they from? In Lake Xochimilco, a high-altitude area near Mexico City. They used to also be found in Lake Chalco, but as it was drained in the late 1800s, we lost a large chunk of axolotl habitat. Since their habitat was already pretty restricted, that development, along with the expanding city near their lake habitat, the introduction of predatory fish, these things contributed to the axolotl status as a critically endangered species. So what are those things sticking out of their heads? They have gill stalks and gill filaments, and these make up their external gills. This is their second highest form of respiration. Their primary form of respiration is actually through their skin. This is called cutaneous respiration, and it's assisted by their slime coating. They can also breathe through their lungs if there's low oxygen in the water. It also helps assist their buoyancy. They can breathe some at the back of their throat as well, which is called buccal respiration. So here's an example of buccal respiration in a frog. You can see how the buccal cavity expands and then forces air into the lungs. This is similar to how it happens in axolotls. The buccal cavity also has a function in suction feeding, which is a common mechanism used by creatures who live and feed in the water. Axolotls also have rudimentary teeth. These teeth are designed for gripping, not chewing. Unlike this fossilized Aerops megacephalus, an axolotl's teeth will not hurt you. A little bit more about axolotl anatomy. They have 4 toes on the front and 5 toes at the back, so if you're counting them, they're not missing any. They just have 4 on the front. They also have costal grooves on their sides. These are in line with their ribs. They help with water absorption, respiration, and thermoregulation. They also have a cloaca, which is similar to birds, so one vent for multiple purposes. More about those costal grooves. They're found on the sides of the salamanders. These grooves over the ribs increase surface area of the skin to aid in water absorption, thermoregulation, and cutaneous respiration. You'll note that most salamanders have them, but newts do not, so that's one way you can tell them apart. Looking at the cloaca and body shape, you can usually distinguish males from females, although sometimes it's hard to tell. But on the females, you can see this wider body and then a smaller cloaca, and on the male, they have a more streamlined body and a larger cloaca. Axolotls are popular in research due to their ability to regenerate. They also have larger cells than humans, and the pigments in these larger cells also vary, so it's easy to identify what cell is being observed. When injured, axolotls can grow additional limbs and tails, so they experience trauma, and then their body, in an attempt to repair it, actually replaces the limb or tail, so they end up with multiple. Axolotls can grow to about 1 foot long, although more often they're about 9 inches long. Their lifespan can also be up to 17 years, but more commonly it's around 6 years. So you're thinking at this point, sounds pretty cool, how do I get one? But there's a few more things that you need to know before acquiring an axolotl. Aquarium size, behavior, tank mates, diet, illnesses, treatments for those illnesses, tap water quality, water hardness, dechlorinating, the nitrogen cycle, nitrogen testing, pH testing, what kind of substrate they need, what is impaction, lighting, filtration, water flow, hides, aquatic plants, temperature, breeding, life cycle, and genetics. So how big of a tank do you need to get? To calculate that, you take the number of axolotls you plan to put in the tank and you multiply it by 10 gallons. So 1 axolotl, 10 gallons. 2 axolotls, 20 gallons, etc. Do not place young axolotls with each other, as they can mistake each other for food. So what kind of species can you keep in the tank with the axolotl? Really, they should be kept in a tank by themselves. Fish, even those intended for food, should be watched closely, as they may mistake the axolotl's gills for food. Also, do not add prey species to the tank that are too big for the axolotl to safely eat. So what do they eat? In the wild, they'll eat any prey that can fit inside their mouth. Crustaceans, snails, tadpoles, small fish, and other small organisms native to Xochimilco. Earthworms and blackworms are a good staple diet for those in captivity. They can also eat live-bearing fish, such as guppies or white cloud minnows. Additional foods are ghost shrimp, cherry shrimp, and mealworms, but keep in mind that they don't digest the exoskeletons, so those could clog your filters. And do not feed any live prey without quarantining first. What not to feed them? Bloodworms is a staple diet. Bloodworms have little to no nutritional value for axolotls. They can be used as a treat, but should not be used as a main diet. It's also not recommended to feed wild-caught earthworms to your axolotls, as they may carry parasites. Fish that are not live-bearing contain a chemical called thiaminase, which causes loss of appetite and interferes with uptake of vitamin B1. So why can't you put gravel in the tank? Rocks that are small enough to fit in the axolotl's mouth will be ingested. As they do that suction feeding, they take in what's around their prey item as well. This can result in impaction and sometimes death. A safer alternative is to use sand for the floor of your tank or to keep the tank bottom bare. So what is cycling? Cycling is referring to the nitrogen process, which out in nature is the flow of nitrogen through a system, and you're kind of recreating that in your aquarium. You're building up that beneficial bacteria that will convert the ammonia to nitrite and then nitrate. This can be safely accomplished by adding liquid ammonia to the empty tank. So what do you need to know about water quality? Here it is. Your good ranges are pH 6.8 to 7.8, ammonia 0 to 1 parts per million, nitrite 0 to 0.25 parts per million, nitrate 0 to 40 parts per million. Alright, pop quiz. Would you want to place your axolotl in a tank if these were your current water parameters? You can click back on the video and take a look at what the good parameters are again, and then make your guess. But when we talk about water parameters, if you were to post a question online, is my axolotl okay? Is something wrong with him? The first question a lot of experienced axolotl caretakers are going to ask is, what are your parameters? And this is what they're talking about right here, the results of this test. Alright, so here's the answer. The pH is about 6.0, that's too low. Ammonia is 0.5 parts per million. Nitrite is at 5 parts per million, and nitrate is at 10 parts per million. So the nitrite is way too high, and the pH is too low. So what it looks like here is we've added our ammonia, we started the cycling process, and it looks like we have that first set of bacteria that's converting our ammonia to nitrite. But there's just not enough of the next set of bacteria that are converting the nitrite to nitrate, so our tank is not done cycling yet. Live plants can help take up ammonium and nitrate and help keep your tank more stable. Plants benefit from the waste produced in the tank, as long as it's not excessive and throwing off the pH to where the plants can't even live, and the axolotl benefits by having better water quality. The plants must be able to survive in the conditions that the axolotl needs. main thing with that, the temperature. So axolotls' optimum water temperature is between 60 and 64 Fahrenheit. They can tolerate 60 to 74, but you don't want to let it go past 74. Tanks can be kept cool using fans, water chillers for aquariums, or even a bottle of frozen water if you're in a pinch. High temperatures increase their metabolism and increase stress, leading to fungal infections. High temperatures also increase toxic ammonia levels, so definitely keep the temperature below 75 Fahrenheit. What about lighting? Axolotls do not have eyelids, so you want to stay away from harsh lights. Choose a light with a dim setting option, and make sure to give your axolotl a break from the light each day to keep their stress level down. Also, provide a hide so that they can get away from the light if they want to. An aquarium light isn't a necessity for an axolotl, but if you need one for your live plants, get one that is dimmable and that doesn't produce too much heat. LED lights are a good choice in this aspect. What else should you add to the tank? We already talked about adding a hiding place, since your axolotls do not have eyelids and are less stressed when they have a place to hide. Live or fake plants if you intend to have a breeding pair. This will give the female a place to deposit her eggs. So what kind of filter do you need for your tank? Sponge filters are a good choice because they don't create water flow. Axolotls are adapted to still water, and water flow can be stressful to them. There are ways to disperse the flow for filters that hang on the back of a tank or for other filters that create flowing water. You can look online to see how other people have done it or come up with your own creative solution. What do I do if my axolotl gets sick? It's important with any animal you have to make sure you have a veterinarian that's willing to treat that kind of animal. So with axolotls, you need to find a vet that's willing to treat amphibians. Stress is a big factor in a lot of axolotl illnesses, so reducing that stress through proper care is key. Note that behavior-wise, a stressed axolotl may curl its gills forward. Even though axolotls are capable of regeneration, if they are injured, they're still vulnerable to infection. Common illnesses are gill fungus, chemical burns, red leg disease, impaction, or parasites. Remedies include salt baths, black tea baths, and Furantu. But keep in mind, if it's an illness that's more serious than a mild gill fungus, it's probably a good idea to take them to the vet. So how do you breed them? If your axolotl is at least 1.5 years old, then it has had time to reach an appropriate size for breeding. There are many opinions on how often to breed axolotls, but in the wild they breed once a year. Over 1,000 eggs may be laid, so prepare as much as you can in advance. After a mating dance, the male deposits a spermatophore and the female picks it up with her cloaca. She then lays her eggs 10 to 14 days later on those plants that you thoughtfully put in your aquarium. Newly hatched axolotls will only eat prey that is moving. Freshly hatched brine shrimp are a popular choice. You also might be able to get by with frozen brine shrimp if your aerator makes them move some in the water, but it's better to go with the freshly hatched brine shrimp. Babies can be kept together for a short time, but once they start developing their front legs, it's a good idea to separate them before they start eating each other. So here's some different colorations. You've got your wild type, which is a mottled green-brown, the albino, which is pink with pink eyes, the leucistic, which is pink with black eyes, a melanoid, which is black with black eyes, golden, which is gold with black eyes. The green fluorescent protein is present in some axolotls, and that makes them glow under black light. You've also got the axanthic, which lacks red, yellow, or both pigments, and some are chimeras, a mixture of colorations. Now let's look at this picture. Now that you know more about axolotl care, do you see anything wrong with it? This axolotl is being kept on gravel. That's not a good substrate for it because it will ingest it when it's trying to eat its food and it will cause impaction, which could threaten its life. Make sure you keep your axolotls on sand or a bare-bottom tank. Axolotls have been popular research subjects since around 1864. Research using axolotls has focused on biological and medical advances. There's a lot that the axolotl can still teach us about stem cells and regeneration. This paper from 2018 tells about the completion of genetic sequencing of the axolotl. This was the largest genome sequenced at the time it was published. To give you an idea of how difficult that was, the axolotl genome contains 32 billion base pairs. In comparison, the human genome has 3 billion base pairs. A little bit about axolotl conservation. In the 1980s, the nuns of the Sisters of Immaculate Health began conservation efforts for the axolotl. This wasn't just for the axolotl's benefit, but also so local people could continue using them in traditional medicine. Their conservation efforts also include another salamander, the Lake Pátzcuaro salamander. UNAM, a university in Mexico, is also making conservation efforts. Part of this includes a Plan B, a colony of axolotls that can be reintroduced in case wild populations go extinct. This video is dedicated to the Kentucky Herpetological Society. Let's learn together and spread awareness about how to care for the species we love and how to protect the environments that are vital to these species in the wild. Thank you.